Greetings. Welcome to Dollar Theater. Yeah, I haven't done a Dollar Theater for a minute. I was supposed to be doing Aliens. I was going to be doing my Alien quadrilogy, but just not feeling it right now. I guess that's how I roll. I tried to watch. I started Aliens a couple of times. I'm just not feeling it. But I wanted to get back into doing a few reviews while I work my way back to that. So I thought I would talk about a movie that is very much talked about, especially recently with the death of Tony Todd. It's a movie that I've seen clips from, but I have never watched. Uh, and I'm always going to be amazed when I show the movies that I say that about, and people say, "What?" But it's true. I know of the movie. I read the source material of the movie, but I have never watched the movie itself, and that is 1992's Candyman. Um, that's right. I know. I'm a little surprised myself, quite honestly. Um, but I read this. I read the story. The story is a little bit different from the movie, of course, by Clive Barker's Book of Blood. Um, Candyman is probably Tony Todd's most famous role that he ever played in. This movie's more than him, though. It has a tremendous cast to it, incredible cast, quite actually. Not only does it has Tony Todd playing Daniel Robitaille, also known as Candyman, but also features Virginia Madsen as Helen, if Xavier Berkeley as her husband, Trevor Lyle. Xander Berkeley is a tremendous actor himself. Um, it also stars Cassie Lemons as her best friend Bernie, and Vanessa Williams, who not the beauty act, not the model, or the Miss America, but there's another one uh, named Vanessa Williams as well. And it also features a appearance that our good friend Eric from Hey Eric told me to look for a secret connection to one of our favorite movies, Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell, and I saw it, and I'm going hell yeah. And that would be Rusty Swimmer, who plays a policewoman, who also appeared on in Friday the 13th. Pretty cool actually. Um, so you guys know a lot about the story already, and many of you know about the story already. Uh, Helen Lyle is a graduate student. Her and her friend are at the University of Illinois Chicago. Go Flames! Um, so while she's there, she's doing a thesis on urban legends. So she's that's what she's studying for her, I guess, for her master's, and she learns about Candyman. She starts studying the myth, urban legend, and in doing so, she starts breaking down the character. She starts breaking down the legend, and we find out that the Candyman. There's two different Candymans. There's a gangster who fancies himself as the Candyman, and when Helen helps catches him, um, what it does, it weakens the whole urban legend about the other Candyman, and so he is in danger of basically being removed. If no one believes in him, he has no power. His power weakens. So he has to restore that power, but he's going to need a little bit of help. So and the way you call the real Candyman out is you say his name 5 times in a mirror. Well, Helen does that, and soon enough, Candyman pops up, and he slowly starts. He says, "I want you to basically restore my legend. And in order to do that, I gotta have you. You gotta be my victim. You gotta basically jumpstart me all over again." And while he is in a weakened position, he still has plenty of power. And pretty soon we start seeing Helen, who had, on the surface seems to be having a really good life, married to a very successful professor, though she suspects that he might be cheating on her. Um, and her friend are Bernie are they're very much into the project, and when Trevor's friend explains to them how the Candyman legend came about, whereas Daniel Robitaille was a victim of a vicious racist crime, um, where he had gotten a white woman pregnant, and so the father and his friends of the girl, they chopped off his hand, Daniel's hand, and left him to die by bee stings. Pretty horrendous way to go, quite honestly. Um, and you don't see that in this movie, but in the other two sequels of Candyman, I think it's Candyman 2, they do show you what happens to him and how he becomes the Candyman, but not in this one, not in this film. Um, During the course of the research, Bernie and Helen to Cabrini Green, which is a infamous project in the projects in Chicago, which is actually it's a very real place. Cabrini Green is a real place, and it is a very, very incredibly dangerous place even today. Nothing has changed. And one of the things I really admired about director Bernard Rose was that he filmed it in Chicago, and he didn't hide anything back. The buildings that he filmed in, yeah, he didn't have a set designer for it. He didn't need one because that's how they looked. Um, it reminded me very much of the movie directed by Clint Eastwood called Gran Torino, where he shot the movie in Detroit, um, in a city called Highland Park. And again, you didn't need to do a damn thing to it. It was perfect as it was, as far as showing the decay and the bleak future and the poverty and the violence. Um, so during the investigation, they meet Anne Marie McCoy, who's a single mom. She's raising a little boy named Anthony, and and because she wants to learn more about the Candyman, the legend, and initially, she runs across Helen runs across a little boy named Jake, who shows her where they had found a murdered victim there in a bathroom, and they thought it was Candyman. So she goes inside there to investigate, and this is where she weakens she starts weakening the legend, because she's while she's investigating the urban legend, she does come across the real Candyman, and she almost dies for it. But it turns out to be a very human gangster who basically walks around with a hook on his hand, and they, like I said, they nearly beat her to death. But she comes back, and the police are glad to have her, because she's going to be a witness. And her and Bernie both notice that cops really don't go too much into the ghetto, but when it involved a white person, they shut the whole place down in order to investigate the crime. A very subtle jab at, and sadly still to the case, like when crime does happen in very poor neighborhoods, the police response time is not always the best. Um, so it's very subtle, but it's there. So Bernie doesn't want to go down there anymore, but that's why Helen went down there by herself. So after she almost dies, she comes back, and she had tried calling her husband from the hospital, and could not reach him at 3 o'clock in the morning. So she really starts being more and more suspicious that her husband is indeed having an affair. She finally does meet Candyman. As she's going home, and Candyman does appear, and basically his power, though, like I said, it's weakened, it's still formidable, and he wants Helen to help restore his legacy, and so he basically blacks her out and frames her for murders. And he's basically trying to push her into, like, she has no more choice, and that's what happens. He, he makes it seem like he has killed a lot of people, and so she finally has to break out before she gets locked away forever. And she finally she makes a deal with Candyman that if he will return the baby from Anne Marie, that she will be his victim. And he breaks the promise, of course. And so she has to battle Candyman and try to save the child. And he tries to save the child. I mean, she tries to save the child from a yearly bonfire in Cabrini Green, and it's not only does she save the child, she also managed to stop Candyman as well. Unfortunately for Helen, this is more than she can handle because she is burned to death basically in rescuing the child, and so she dies. But then she's reunited with Candyman. Now, it's hard to know if she took on his, by restoring the power, because the way that the deaths have been happening and people thought it was Candyman, they thought they saw Candyman in the bonfire. It's not really established if Helen's death restores him, or she absorbs the power that he got or she got from him when she killed him, when she kills him. It's not really sure if they're, or if they're both walking together on the same, as are they together as a couple now in death, because that's what Candyman offered Helen. You could be, immortality. We don't, but we also know too that he can be killed. Even though he is a supernatural entity, he can be stopped. If people completely, if they don't believe in him in the urban legend, he'll basically vanish out of existence. But the more people that see it, like when they see him in the bonfire, or when Helen sees him and understands what he is, that belief gives him that power. And of course, it seems like to me like he would have a long way to go. Like Helen wouldn't be just enough to restore him. He would need other victims. So it's a little bit cloudy in that regard. And of course, the end of the story is it's pretty cool, actually. I won't reveal the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but let's just say that it's a good ending. It's a good ending. So what did I think of Candyman? I definitely will say one thing. This is a thinking man's horror movie, and it's not rushed. Man, I can't tell you how cool that was. We do see Helen going, after we see the progression of Helen when she's starting out as a student, and all the way to the first time she meets Candyman, the first time she gets, she wakes up and she finds out she's in a slaughterhouse. It takes the time. Everything's not happening in 5 days. It's like it takes place in a year. It takes place throughout the year, because they show the bonfire. They show the bonfire that was going to be burned, and then what happens during the course of the year, all this stuff is happening, and it goes right back to the bonfire. It's not just done in 2 or 3 days. It takes time, and I thought that was really interesting how they did that. And the one thing I will say about this film too, which was really entertaining for me, was I really wish this movie would have been filmed in black and white. This film had a vibe from a movie from the 40s or the 50s, as every single major character smoked on camera, which was really unusual, really unusual. It looked like a movie from the 40s or the 50s. Everybody. And it was a trip. I was going like, wow, okay. In fact, I think the only person who didn't smoke was Candyman himself. Even when they showed briefly his pictures, that's not who he was. I thought that was a really interesting aspect of the film, quite honestly. Like I said, it sort of gave a little bit of power to just how old Candyman was. He was from the 1890s all the way up. And I guess, even though the movie was set in modern times, it did have sort of like that 50s and 40s and 50s feel to it in many respects. Um, like I said before, I really like the location of where director Bernard Rose set the film at. Um, it, while and think about it, it was sort of like a flip. Whereas Daniel had grown up with privilege, and because his father had become he was a wealthy man. Even though being wealthy back in the 1890s as a black man, as we all know, it really didn't. It afforded some privileges, but not all privileges, because while Daniel had went to school and was from a wealthy family and privilege, he a fine painter. But um, here he was. As soon as he went to bed with a white woman, he was instantly drugged out and savagely and racially uh, butchered based on his color. Um, and now now it shows nothing has changed. Cabrini Green being a basically just another hellhole, just another place where being born and being trying to raise in that area, you can't. You can only leave if you can't leave where you're at. You're gonna die a death just like Daniel did. Maybe not have your hand cut off and covered with bees, but you'll end up dying in that place anyway, through criminal activity, through poverty, through bad health. No one gives a shit. And you can see why and how the Candyman legend could thrive in a place like Cabrini Green. You can see why he rested there. You would think that, well, wouldn't he go back to the place where he was killed to have power? No, because they don't believe those sort of things. I do believe urban legends and storytelling about like Candyman. I think it happens more often than not in places like Cabrini Green or Highland Park or other poor areas where for many that's what that would count as entertainment, when they sit around and you tell stories about different legends. And that's how it really got bigger. It got hooked. It came more than the sum of its parts. Um, the acting is really strong, of course. The acting is really strong. Virginia Madsen's she's beautiful in this movie. Um, uh, um, Tony Todd looks dashing. We also see that Ted Raimi, the brother of Sam Raimi, he had an appearance in the film as well. When they're telling the story about the Candyman and about how he strikes, and that is if you say his name 5 times in the mirror. Now, the first time we see this, we're hearing this. Bernie's telling the story. We're seeing this, but we don't know if this story is true or not. Is she just repeating the urban legend story? We see, like if you say his name 5 times in the mirror, he'll come out. We don't know if the story that she's telling is actual fact or not. I think that it was not. I think the stories that were told in the Cabrini Green section, and you see that, Sweets to the Sweets, the picture of him on there with the bees in the toilet. That was, that's where Candyman was. I think the story that we see in the beginning of the movie, where Ted Raimi appears in, I think that was just part of the urban legend story being shared. But it does lead to, it tells them about how they can call Candyman out by saying his name 5 times. Like I said, there's other actors in here as well. Rusty Schwimmer, Cassie Lemons. You might remember Cassie Lemons. Some of you might remember her. She did a Van Damme movie called Hard Target. She played a police officer in that movie. Again, Clive Barker has, we talked a little bit about Stephen King stories yesterday on the Midnight Society, me and JT. Clive Barker, there's a lot of Clive Barker stories out there in the movies as well, besides the Hellraiser movies. Of course, like when people talk about Candyman, they forget that. They don't really remember that this actually came from Clive Barker. This is his story. Because, they don't put his name over the title of the movie, Clive Barker's Candyman. They don't do that like they do Stephen King. But it just continued to run of films in the 90s, early 2000s of Clive Barker stories. Now, of course, his movies didn't do quite as well as Stephen King's stories did. In fact, they really didn't even come close as far as box office goes. But the stories themselves, especially Candyman and the Midnight Meat Train, Nightbreed, were extraordinary films and on par with anything that has Stephen King's name on it. I would put up Candyman up against any Stephen King movie. This is really interesting. This is gonna be. You have to rewatch this more than just once. This is a more than once rewatch. It's very interesting. Very interesting story. All right. Well, that's my first time thoughts. If you're new to the channel, come by, hit the like button, drop your own comments, drop your own thoughts on Candyman. I mean, other than I liked it or it's good, I want to hear some thoughts. Put some feeling into that comment. I'd like to know what makes Candyman. Why is Candyman? Why is it resonant? How does it resonate all these years later? Really, it's just one movie. No one talks about the sequels at all. Even though I had Tony Todd in them, nobody really talks about those two movies. They do talk about Candyman. Why is that? So drop a comment down below. Hit the like button, comment section, all that good jazz. And then we'll see you next Monday for Dollar Theater. Thanks for watching. Peace.